There's a weight you've been carrying, and maybe you don't even realize it. Not on your back, not in your hands, but right here in your chest, in your jaw, in that constant tension behind your eyes. It's resistance, the kind that doesn't scream, but lingers. You wake up and you're already bracing for the day. You expect things to go wrong. You overthink before you speak. You hold back when something inside you wants to move. And every moment, whether you notice it or not, you're fighting life. Not because you're weak, but because somewhere along the way, you learned that relaxing isn't safe. You learned that letting go means losing control, that softness means being unprepared. So, you resist everything. But what if that resistance is what's actually slowing everything down? See, life doesn't need to be wrestled into place. It doesn't respond to pressure the way we've been taught. Sometimes the moment things start working is the moment you stop fighting them. And I don't mean giving up. I mean letting go of the inner tension that says it has to go this way, it has to happen now, it has to look like this, or it's wrong. That voice, that grip, is what's making everything feel stuck. Because when you resist, you block the flow. You block the lessons, the people, the healing, the clarity. You become so focused on controlling the current that you forget you're in a river. And rivers don't move because you tell them to. They move when you stop swimming against them. Life starts flowing not when you try harder, but when you surrender better, when you loosen your shoulders, when you stop gripping for answers, when you allow things to be as they are instead of how you demand them to be. The less you resist, the more space you create, the more life can breathe, the more you can actually feel, not react, not force, not escape, but feel what's real. And in that space, something shifts, not outside of you, but inside. And that's where the flow begins. The tricky thing about resistance is that it doesn't always look like struggle. Sometimes it looks like overthinking. Sometimes it looks like being too busy to feel what's underneath. Sometimes it looks like planning every detail so nothing surprises you. It hides in the habits you think are keeping you safe. But really, they're just keeping you from moving forward. Because here's the truth most people avoid. You don't have to be at war with everything to create a good life. You don't need to protect yourself from every possibility. You don't need to control every outcome just to feel okay. You've just forgotten what it feels like to trust life again. And I get it. Trust is hard when things haven't gone your way, when you've been let down, when you've done the work and still ended up hurt. So what do? You tense up. You start to micromanage your own healing. You try to think your way through emotions. You try to schedule your growth, calculate your worth, fix what isn't even broken. But here's the twist. The more you try to control your flow, the more you clog it. Because resistance isn't just tension in your body, it's tension in your energy. And life responds to that. When you move from fear, you get friction. When you move from faith, even quiet, uncertain, shaky faith, you get movement. The less you resist, the more life begins to work with you instead of around you. And that's when things start falling into place almost without effort. Not because you force them, but because you finally stop standing in their way. And the wild part? The moment you stop resisting is usually when you start seeing clearly. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. You stopped tightening your grip. You stopped demanding answers. You allowed space. And from that space, clarity rises like breath, returning to lungs that forgot how to expand. This is what nobody teaches us. Surrender isn't losing, it's listening. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's saying, I don't have to know everything right now. I just have to stop fighting what already wants to guide me. And when you let yourself soften, when you let the moment just be, life meets you there. Not with noise, but with direction. Not with chaos, but with flow. Here's what makes resistance so sneaky. Most of it isn't loud. It's subtle. It's sitting in a conversation, pretending to listen while your mind is busy defending itself. It's knowing something's wrong, but convincing yourself to stay anyway because changing paths feels too risky. It's saying, I'm fine, Wayne, when you're not. Not because you're trying to lie, but because part of you believes there's no space for your truth. That's resistance. Not in the dramatic, obvious way, but in the quiet, daily way. We betray our own flow to keep the illusion of control. But what if you stopped? What if, just for a moment, you dropped the inner armor, the over-explanation, the need to be understood, the habit of rehearsing life before living it? What would happen if you actually gave life permission to carry you instead of constantly trying to carry everything on your own? That's the invitation. Not to collapse, not to quit, but to stop fighting a current that was never against you in the first place. Because that's the truth, isn't it? You're not really fighting life. You're fighting your fear of what might happen if you actually let life lead for once. And beneath that fear, there's usually grief. Grief for the versions of you that worked so hard to survive. Grief for the years spent overthinking instead of flowing. Grief for the things you missed while trying to hold it all together. But grief isn't the end of your story. It's just the clearing. It's what happens when resistance begins to melt. And in its place, something else emerges. Space, stillness, a sense of inner openness you almost forgot was possible. And that space, that's where your real life begins. Not the one you planned, not the one you forced, but the one that rises to meet you when you stop holding everything so tightly. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to stop pretending that effort alone is what brings peace. Because the more you let go of the inner resistance, the more life starts to respond. With clarity, with alignment, with ease you didn't know was waiting for you. The strange thing is, resistance doesn't only show up when things are bad. Sometimes it shows up right when things are starting to go well, right when love enters, right when peace settles in, right when life starts aligning after so much chaos, and instead of relaxing, you tense up again because you're waiting for it to break. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're holding your breath because somewhere deep down, you've been taught that peace is temporary and struggle is home. That's how deep resistance can live. Not just in what you reject, but in what you don't know how to receive. And that's the moment where most people sabotage their own flow. Not because they're broken, but because they've spent so long in survival mode, they don't recognize safety when it finally arrives. They resist it. They question it. They try to control it just to make sure it's real. But in that very act, they disconnect from it. They trade presence for protection. But here's what no one tells you. Peace has to be practiced. Flow has to be trusted. Just like you trained yourself to expect struggle, you can train yourself to feel safe in softness again. And the starting point, it's not some big spiritual breakthrough. It's small. It's micro. It's pausing when your instinct says to rush. It's softening when your mind says to brace. It's breathing through the urge to fix, to chase, to control. And in those moments when you choose not to resist, even for a second, something powerful begins to shift. Your nervous system recalibrates, your energy quiets, and the present moment, the one you keep skipping over, becomes enough. Because this is the truth. When you stop resisting life, you're not giving up your power. You're reclaiming it. You're saying, I no longer have to fight everything to feel alive. You're letting life move through you instead of trying to bend it around your fears. That's what flow really is. Not floating around aimlessly, but living from a place of clarity, softness, and strength that doesn't need control to feel stable. And when you reach that place, even briefly, you realize that life was never against you. It was just waiting for you to stop holding it back. You see, life has never been about perfection. It's about rhythm. Moments of movement, moments of pause, moments where everything clicks into place, and moments where nothing makes sense at all. And the people who live with the most peace, they're not the ones who have everything figured out. They're the ones who stopped resisting the rhythm. They don't fight the quiet seasons. They don't panic when the answers don't come. They know that trying to force clarity in a season of stillness only creates noise. So instead of resisting the unknown, they make space for it. And somehow, in that space, the next step always reveals itself. But resistance convinces you that you can't afford to wait. That stillness is dangerous. That if you're not pushing, you're falling behind. So you rush, you react. You reach for anything that feels like progress, even if it's pulling you in the wrong direction. You settle for movement instead of alignment. You mistake exhaustion for purpose, and eventually you burn out. Not because you didn't work hard, but because you never gave yourself permission to rest and to trust. Let this be your reminder. Not everything requires your grip. Some things only arrive when your hands are open. Some paths only appear when you stop obsessively trying to find them. And some healing only begins when you stop demanding that it hurry up. The less you resist what is, the more power you have to shape what comes next. Because resistance keeps you tangled in your fear, but surrender opens the door to intuition. It allows you to hear the softer voice, the inner signal, the one that was drowned out by all your pushing and proving. And when you stop fighting the moment, even if it's messy, even if it's uncertain, you stop being ruled by fear. You start being led by something deeper, not logic alone, not emotion alone, but something in between. The quiet knowing you've ignored for too long. The less you resist, the more in sync you become with life's current. And when you're in sync, you don't have to chase timing. You are the timing. You don't have to run after what's next. You're already standing in the doorway of it, still, grounded, and ready. One of the most overlooked forms of resistance is self-protection disguised as control. Not the obvious kind, not screaming, "I need control" out loud, but the subtle kind, the way you shrink in conversations just to avoid being misunderstood, the way you lower your expectations before life can disappoint you, the way you say, "I don't care" about things you actually care about deeply just so they can't hurt you if they don't work out. That's resistance too, not against life out there, but life in here, your own aliveness, your hope, your openness. You resist the very parts of yourself that want to come forward because you're scared of what might happen if you let them. But let me ask you something. What's the cost of holding back your full self just to stay safe? What are you sacrificing in exchange for a little more certainty and a little less risk? Because here's the paradox. The more you resist your emotions, your truth, your movement, the more disconnected you feel from everything around you. You can't be numb and in flow at the same time. You can't protect yourself from life and still expect to feel fully alive. And maybe no one ever told you this before, but you're allowed to release the need to always be prepared. You're allowed to move without knowing where it leads. You're allowed to feel deeply and not apologize for it. That's not weakness. It's presence. It's a commitment to living with your heart open, not just your plans in place. And when you stop resisting your emotions, something beautiful happens. They move. They don't stay stuck. They don't destroy you. They pass through like weather. Intense, yes, but temporary. Flow isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about letting what's real move through you instead of locking it down and calling it strength. Because the more you resist what you feel, the more you end up resenting your own life. You build walls between yourself and the world, and then wonder why nothing fulfilling ever finds its way in. But the moment you soften, the moment you let it come up, come out, come through, you reconnect with something honest, not controlled, not perfect, but real. And that's where life meets you again. Not when you've figured everything out, but when you've stopped hiding from your own depth. So maybe the question isn't, how do I make life work for me? Maybe the real question is, where am I still resisting what already wants to move through me? Because the more you soften, the more you trust, the more you release that tight grip, the more life begins to flow without needing to be forced. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to control every step. You just need to stop standing in your own way. Because what's meant for you isn't trying to hide. It's just waiting for you to be still enough, open enough, present enough to receive it. And if this message spoke to something real in you, if it helped you breathe a little deeper or loosen your grip, then you already know what to do. Like this video to let it ripple out to someone else who might need it today. Subscribe if you want to keep hearing messages like this, the kind that meet you where you are and remind you who you really are. And if you made it all the way here, comment the word "flow" below. Just that one word. So I know you're not just watching, you're choosing to live differently. Now let the resistance go. Let life move and meet it with open hands.